First we had X, then we had Pearl, and now we have MaXXXine. And I guess the question is, did Ti West do this trilogy justice?
I'm curious, did you always want to be in that line of work?
I always wanted to be famous.
MaXXXine is the third and final film in Ti West's trilogy, starting with X, going to Pearl, and then finally finishing with this 80s film, MaXXXine. What I love so much about what Ti West has done here is that he's crafted 3 films that are singular in their vision, yet they are so beautifully cohesive together and can be watched, consumed in so many different ways. X was, of course, the first film released, but Pearl is the first film chronologically. I really do think that you can watch these 3 movies in any order that you want, and each experience will be slightly different and rewarding in its own way. X was the most kind of classic slasher flick of the 3. Pearl allowed the audience to really see Mia Goth shine. My lord, was she good in that movie. And MaXXXine combines a lot of different elements. We still have the ode to the classic slasher, but we have a lot of references to 80s Hollywood. Goth isn't given as much opportunity to shine, but she's still great here. Really, MaXXXine is about the glitz and the glam, and we saw that on screen. This third film is set in 80s Hollywood as we follow Mia Goth's character as she is on the verge of becoming a successful Hollywood actress after leaving Texas as the lone survivor from the X slashing that occurred. I assume that's not a spoiler. Sorry if you haven't seen X yet. So she is in LA and she is gonna be a star. Right from the get-go, we have a pretty gorgeous retro feel. Every scene is kind of splashed in neon, either directly or indirectly, and it is quite reminiscent of a lot of 80s films. They used Mini Hawk lenses on this set, specifically the Mini Hawk hybrid anamorphics, which gives this gorgeous bokeh that we see in the background of many of these shots, and it adheres to that vintage filmic feel from 80s movies. At its core, MaXXXine really is an ode to cinema. It's an ode to movies that have influenced Ti West, that West calls back to, that he has clearly been inspired by. Some of these references are direct and explicit, like the references to Psycho, for example, in this project. There's some less direct references to other influences like Halloween and, of course, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then we have some more obscure nods to folks like Theda Bara, who was a silent film star in the early to mid 1900s and is considered by many to be one of the first quote-unquote sex symbols of Hollywood, which of course draws a line back to Mia Goth's character. As I mentioned early in this video, Goth wasn't given as much here as she was in Pearl. I still go back and think about that closing monologue from Pearl. What a brilliant performance there. Of course, no award season love, but that's to be expected, unfortunately, from a project like Pearl, X, and MaXXXine. So Goth was good here, but she didn't quite shine as bright as she did in the previous film, but that's not really any fault of her own. That's the script, that's the direction, not really leaning into her acting ability as much. In fact, the performances that were kind of given a little bit more room to be over the top or to explore the dimensions of their characters were the supporting performances. most notably probably Kevin Bacon's performance as an off-the-wall private investigator. I found his character to be pretty hilarious. It requires you to buy into what this film is. MaXXXine is not taking itself too seriously, which I love, and Bacon's performance is essentially a microcosm of that overall feeling of the movie. It's fun, it is full of tropes and references to films past, but this is, of course, intentional. There's a very fine line between being cheesy and knowing it, and trying to be serious but ending up cheesy. MaXXXine certainly fits into the former category. Some of the lines, some of the actual plot points, the beats themselves in the film are corny. They're a bit cheesy, but West is aware of this approach. He is showing his love for 80s films, for slasher films that have laid the groundwork for him to be able to make a movie like this. So it's important to go into the film understanding this if you want it to be completely serious, a wholly intense psychological thriller, then you might be disappointed. I won't get into any spoilers, but the climax itself, this third act, the end of the third act, really is going to be polarizing. I personally loved it. I thought that it was an appropriate end to a wild ride in this trilogy, but I'm almost certain that many folks out there will not be a fan. I won't say too much more. Despite West having some dialogue and some plot points being a little bit tongue-in-cheek, he is still a master of building suspense and tension. I found myself really intrigued about what was going on, about who was after Mia Goth's character, although it does become somewhat obvious if you've paid attention to X in particular. Again, no spoilers, but I was never bored and I found myself engaged throughout the entire film. Of course, just like in X and just like in Pearl, there are some pretty gnarly kills. There is one in particular that elicited a gasp, sigh, laugh, shriek from the audience. This was a scene in an alley with a Buster Keaton-esque man with a knife who, of course, falls to Mia Goth's character's violent side in a way that has appeared in film before, but is certainly going to get a reaction when you watch it. West is saying a few things here about the nature of Hollywood. He's saying some things about religious conservatism in the 80s and the rise of these evangelical groups, but that's not really the point of the film. It's not a project that is going incredibly deep into its thematic explorations. It's mostly here to be a good time, and that's all right. I think that between MaXXXine, X, and Pearl, West has done something pretty incredible here, crafting a trilogy over the course of only a few years that I think has the chance to stand the test of time within a small but devout group. If you watched this whole video, thank you so much. You're the best. Appreciate you. Like it, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't done that, and then watch the next video when I post it. Cheers.